This and that and what the fuck else, episode 99. Now, it's quite a lot. I never thought I'll get to 99. As you can see, I'm in the darkness. Hello darkness, my old friend. With compliments of our Eskom. Eskom that has said they want a Moorse tariff increase, and the way forward is green. That is something that we should be very, very concerned about. This unregulator that all of a sudden turned green. That's a fuck up for us. But that is how it works. There are politicians and business conglomerate tycoons that are busy making plans to destroy our lives. And we have to wake up. This is getting fucking serious. Those people are ruthless. They don't give a shit about the human suffering they cause. Nothing. As long as they make money, they're happy. And it is quite clear, looking at the fiasco in America around their elections and in Brazil, it is obvious. The politician race has got the Western world by the balls. Doesn't matter which way you vote, nothing is going to change. I'm sad to say, the only way out of this shit is going to be the French Revolution way. And the politicians, the WEF cabal, and bulk of the media needs to be removed from society. Removed. No other way. No other way. If you try and negotiate yourself out of this shit, you're going to end up with a knife in your back. But let's get to the news. I'm going to start this one off as usual with a little bit of art. This is out and out graphic art. Look at it. I don't care about symbolism and shit like that. Just look at the image, look at the details. This is a damn good artist. And then we get to this. Now, due to many reasons, I cannot read the whole thing. You have to stop it and read it for yourself, because it's too dangerous for me to read all of it. Confidential Pfizer documents, a new study confirm the snake bite is causing transmission. Shit are falling on you without you knowing it. Read that. And it is shocking and dangerous. This is really important that you take note of it. I personally have got a principle of avoiding physical contact with bitten people. And then this was quite interesting. The US Supreme Court ruling, COVID vaccines are not vaccines. In its decision, the Supreme Court confirms that the damage caused by the snakebite is irreparable, because the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. There are no further appeals. Now this is apparently going to have serious ramifications. And the people that are being lined up for a beating in the courts is the manufacturers, the employers, and every operator that demanded you get bitten. So let's see where this goes. I hope they fuck a lot of these journalists up in the same time. And then we get this little meme that you can look at and smile. It's not a game or anything, but in case some of you are wondering, the conspiracy theorists are up. The 17-0 is slashed out and it's now 18-0. Think about it. And then the last thing on this, in this line, after 200 children die Parents sue Indonesian government over pharma regulations. And you can read the whole thing if you want. More than a dozen parents in Indonesia are suing the country's drug regulator and health ministry for allowing the import of a drug linked to kidney failure, which killed nearly 200 children this year. This is important. Let's wait and see what's going to happen. And then we get to the Donbas. Now, you have to, if you look at this post, a Russian military base appeared in the center of a temporary occupied Mariupol. The BBC published a satellite image of this base from the company Maxar. The exact address of the BBC base is not given. Take note, the BBC. And it is a well-known fact that this BBC is one of the primary sources of fake news. Primary sources of fake news. The UK is now known as the source of most fake news, and the BBC is the primary source for fake news. Because listen to the next thing. It is a hospital where the writing says, from the Russian army to the citizens of Mariupol. Now, let that sink in. Fuck this MSM. And then we get to this one. Now, this one was all over the news and how brutally the Russians has bombed the Mariupol theater and that hospital and all that cock. And listen to this. Interview with Mariana, and I cannot read that surname. There was no airstrike on Mariupol Maternity Ward 3. And there is that girl in that image, which was staged. She was an actor. That, in another interview, she said they never knew what the hell they were doing there actually. They were just paid to be there, and then they were made up and photos were taken. Afterwards, they found out what those photographs were used for. And on the right hand, there she is with her baby and her husband. This is how MSM spread the fake news. Now this one is not fake, it's a reality, and it is heartbreaking. The wall, the concrete, the ceiling, I was trapped in debris. Everything fell on me, the wall, the concrete, the ceiling. After the Ukraine shelling, a teacher from Strakhanov in the LPR spent several hours buried under the rubble of her own apartment. And this is what the West is financing, the bombing of civilians. And then they want to open their fucking traps about Russians shooting out the electricity system. They, this evil West, they finance weapons and ammunition to shoot civilians in the Donbas. And they've been doing it since 2014, 8 years. I can see the West is crumbling, and it's clear, all over you can see it. And the people, there's a lot of people in Europe that are going to suffer like hell. But actually I don't feel a fuck for it. Their politicians using their tax money to give to the Zotsis in Ukraine to shoot civilians in the Donbas. And then there's this from Mariupol. Mariupol construction continues, and look at that beautiful apartment block that they built, and look again in front of the apartment block, look at that gymnasium, open air gymnasium, and I've seen many photographs of it. Now the next one is one of the main reasons why I don't feel anything for the suffering of those people in central Ukraine and in Kiev. Crimea without electricity in 2014. Did you know that in 2014 Crimea was in the same situation as Ukraine now, without light and water? After joining Russia, Crimea found itself in a blockade. As a result of sabotage from the Ukrainian side, all the electricity transmission lines supplying Crimea were damaged, and at the end of the autumn of 2015, more than 2 million residents of the Republic were left without electricity. Moreover, Ukraine, with no warning, blocked the North Crimea Channel, the main source of fresh water for the peninsula. Today, the historical boomerang returns to Ukraine and hurts those who looked on the Crimea catastrophe with gloating. As I've said many times, payback is a bitch. And then there's this from Lavrov. The United States is now living at the expense of Europe, and it will be cashing in on the economic crisis and energy crisis that Europe has found itself in. They will be selling gas to Europe at 4 times the price that Europe used to pay for the Russian gas, and they will be advancing their anti-inflation laws, allocating subsidies worth hundreds of billions of dollars to their industries to lure investors away from that very Europe, and eventually Europe will find itself deindustrialized. And once again, do I feel anything? No. The citizens of Europe allowed that crazy van der Leyen to fuck their lives up and their economy. And she did it on instructions from those newcons sitting in the shithouse. And now Europe is paying. Europe sat quietly and watched how the Americans lined them up perfectly and then stole all their industry. And more good news for the West. OPEC Plus to consider deeper oil output cuts ahead of Russia's sanctions and proposed price cap. The oil war is outlining its contours. OPEC Plus has said it will further cut production after the price ceiling is introduced, which will raise the price even more. Both American and European consumers will suffer. This price ceiling is a fucking crazy idea. Bird brains manufactured that shit. And the citizens is going to pay. Then we get it from this little clown from Kiev. Zelensky is not satisfied with the price ceiling of Russian oil. The Ukrainian president considers not very serious the decision of the G7 and the European Union to set the price ceiling of Russian oil at $60 per barrel. According to Zelensky, this is a weak position. Now my question is this: who the fuck is he to even be involved in this? But he's instigating them to do these stupid things. And the West is going to pay dearly for the support they gave this Zazi. And then we have this. Foreign aid is taking money from the poor people of a rich country and giving it to the rich people of a poor country. And that is exactly what it is. Exactly. And then we get to Netherlands. It's time we do the same in this country. I know some farmer markets already exist, but I think more farms should set up their own shops. I know I'm not the only one who will support them. And that's on the story of the EU, where the Dutch government is dead set on expropriating 3,000 farms. And I can tell you this, the Dutch government are threatening to buy up and shut down 3,000 farms that fail to meet EU net zero targets. Communities are showing solidarity to farmers by starting food cooperatives and farmer markets to buy direct from local farms. That is a good plan, but the reality is they have to go to their parliament building, rip all those fucking politicians out and remove them. Make compost, because that politicians are dead set on destroying the people. And they're doing this food destruction on command of the WEF. People better wake up. The WEF has stated clearly they want to reduce the carbon footprint. You are the carbon they want to reduce. And then we get this sobering article. Global economy out of West's control. As the EU challenges China for refusing to sanction Russia over the conflict in Ukraine, we hear from Fabio Massimo Parenti, an associate professor at the China Foreign Affairs University, who says Moscow and Beijing are emerging powers that are transforming the global economy. And that is the truth and the reality, and the Americans and the West in general need to adjust and adapt to the new reality. If they think they're going to war themselves out of this cock, they're in for a hot surprise. Russia was among the few world powers that neither had colonies in Africa or elsewhere, nor participated in slave trade throughout its history. Russia helped in every possible way the peoples of the African continent to attain their freedom and sovereignty. And that is the truth and the reality, and that is why Russia is popular in Africa today. If Africa right prices its commodities and resources, it would completely destroy the American Western economies, forcing them to reinvent those economies from the ground up. That would be the worst. That would be worse than the current energy inflation crisis. And this is very true, because the cheap Russian energy is now out of the equation. And all that Africa need to do is say, fuck you, Europe. You're going to pay a fair price for our stuff. You want our stuff. And you're going to pay in our currencies. And Europe is fucked, because they've designed their whole economy on cheap Russian energy and cheap imports, or let's call it cheap stealing from Africa. And then we get this from the Chinese. The US stationing of troops in Syria is illegal. The US smuggling of oil and grain from Syria is illegal. The US keeps violating international laws and rules, and yet claims to be a champion of what it calls the rules-based international order. And that is the truth. But the time is running out. If that American president is clever, he gives the command and bring all his fucking soldiers back home and let them come and start work in his own country and build his own country, and at the same time secure his own fucking borders. Stay out of these other countries. Get out. But they are stealing and killing everywhere over the globe. But their time is running out. They're low on weapons. They're no more the most powerful and the most modern military operators on the globe. Between China, Russia, India, and Northern Korea, and Iran, they will wipe the West out in a few days without using nuclear. The fucking West better wake up. And then we get this, and I laughed when I read this one. Russia bought 109 oil tankers. Russia has bought more than 100 tankers to sell oil and deliver to India, China and Turkey amid Western sanctions. It delivered a lot of its oil and gas to Europe in pipelines. But now it's 109 more tankers to serve the markets that they consider friendly nations. The West is fucked. And then there is this. After South Korea, now Germany openly complains about America's unfair trade policies. Japan and the Netherlands are also trying to resist US coercion. But do these vassal states have the courage to fight back? Only time will tell. But one thing I know is the Chinese, Indians, Russia, Iran is busy rewriting the realities of global trade. And the Americans are powerless. They can do fuck all about it. That past last weekend's elections in Taiwan must be a shocker. And then there's just this little meme that you can think about. Not every child will grow up to be a doctor or a lawyer. Teach kids it's okay to work with your hands and build cool stuff. And this is what our societies need so desperately. Russia and China can see that the fundamentals of the US economy are crumbling from the inside. If the EU leaders were wise, they would have stayed neutral in the war and have prevented the cannibalization of their economy, which is keeping the US alive. Russia has time on its side. And that is so true. And the Russians and the Chinese are both nations that is known for patience. They can wait. NASA has banned China from collaborating on the International Space Station. So China built its own Tiangong space station. Now the US says China is threatening America by having its own space station. Listen to that cock. Again, the Americans can have a space station, but nobody else. Fuck the Americans. And then this is something that you can just laugh about and smile and think about the possibilities. This is a presentation of what they say IR4 is going to do to farming. There is that robot working in the fields there. And I posted this on Twitter and said, at least this thing will not strike, steal your products or produce, or break your equipment. Could be nice to have a crew like that. And then we get to that what a fuck, and if you're a South African, you will really enjoy this one. Look at that and laugh. Look at that speedkop at the back there. Look at that belly. People, please be careful on the roads this festive season. Apparently they are eating the traffic violators. Look at that stomach. It almost seems impossible. But here in South Africa, fuck all is impossible. And on that note, please hit me with a like and a subscribe and share the thing. And have a great evening. En vir my Afrikaanse ouens, good night.